there, this is Datila with Rangers of Wrestling, bringing you the It's Wrestling Time post show. And for tonight, we will be talking about AEW Dynamite. Winter is coming. Today is Wednesday, December 14, 2022. All right, and so tonight's Dynamite kicked off with match 4 of the Best of 7 series. It was the Elite versus the Death Triangle. Now, you guys remember this whole Best of 7 series matches started because the Elite came back and they did not win, they did not regain their trios titles. So the Death Triangle was ahead of the Elite, but of course the Elite came back. So now tonight's match kicked off with Penta and Nick. And this was a good match. It really was. But of course, the story being told in this match was the fact that I was gonna say the Lucha Brothers, the Death Triangle keeps using that hammer. Now there was a spot in this match where Nick, I believe he landed wrong, and he like messed up his ankle, and so he couldn't really walk, and he did not tag in, and he got taken to the back. So I was actually kind of worried because I thought that maybe he had messed up his ankle. And as I've messed up my ankle, so I know how difficult it is to not be able to walk when you have a messed up ankle. But nevertheless, Nick came back. But the reason why Death Triangle won this by submission was because when the ref was distracted, Penta used a hammer on Nick's ankle behind the ref's back. And so Pac held Omega to prevent the pin. And so Phoenix made Nick Jackson tap out. And that is how the Triangle picks up the win here. And so after the match, Kenny Omega took the microphone and he says that every single match, the Triangle has used a hammer. And he wants to make the hammer legal. He says he's not. He says that Omega's not one to take the liar take the hammer laying down, which I thought was funny, pun intended, and that he's sick and tired of playing by the rules of the Death Triangle. So then he makes it. Oh, excuse me. He says, "Why not make it a no DQ match for match number 5?" So we're going to get a no DQ match for match number 5. And then we also find out later on in the night that match 6 would be a false count anywhere match. And if we need to get to match 7, it would be a Escalera de la Muerte match. So right now the way things stand is the Elite is 1-3. So that triangle is 3-1. So it's the Elite need to win the next couple of matches to be able to get to match 7. And honestly, this was a really great way to start off the Tonight show. I actually really enjoyed the match. It was fun. I'm not surprised at Death Triangle won. I honestly do think this Best of Series matches is going to go all the way to 7. That's why it's called Best of 7. Now, as for the Escalera de la Muerte match, I was actually at the inaugural All Out in 2019 when we had an Escalera de la Muerte match between the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers, and it was an incredible match, and I honestly would not mind seeing that. Actually, I think I would probably be there live if we do get to match 7. So it was a good way to kick off tonight's Dynamite. All right. So afterwards, we had an MJF promo, and he starts talking about how Ricky Starks finally did it, like how everyone saw his potential, and that last week Ricky Starks is a star in the making. And when MJF first appeared on Dynamite, he was already a star. I'm surprised match 7 isn't going to be a hammer on a pole match in the stroke of the late 90s WCW Vincent booking genius. Hey, I'm pretty stoked for that Escalera de la Muerte match. Ladder match, in case. It's just a regular ladder match. Okay, there's nothing special about it. It's just a regular ladder match. I was actually taken back that they called it Escalera de la Muerte. So, which translates to the ladder of death. So back to this promo. So MJF starts talking about how simpletons can relate to Starks because they suck, and instead of fixing stuff, they just whine and complain. And MJF says that it's not his fault. He was born rich, attractive, pretty, witty, funny, and he was born better than you and was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And then he starts talking about how pressure, like, because that's what Ricky Starks brought up, pressure, in the last week's promo. And he starts talking about how MJF doesn't have any pressure. Ricky Starks is the one with pressure because he has no one to let down. Meanwhile, everybody's rooting for Ricky Starks. And he says, will Ricky Starks be able to win the big one? Can he do it or will he let everybody down? He says, that is pressure. And since he called Starks a pebble, he says, will the pebble turn into a diamond or turn into dust? Now, I actually really like this promo by MJF. MJF is really good at cutting promos. But MJF did make a good point. Ricky Starks does have a lot of pressure because this is his adopted hometown. And not only that, but everybody was rooting for Ricky Starks. So if he failed, he would let everybody down. But honestly, he didn't. And I will talk more about that when I get to the main event. So the Acclaim was supposed to come out. I guess they were supposed to have a promo. But instead of having a promo, they get attacked by Sanjay Dutt, Satan Singh, and Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett hitting Max Caster with a guitar. I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of this because I really do not want to see the Acclaim versus Jeff Jarrett. You could do so much more. You could do the Acclaim versus the Guns. You can do the Acclaim versus FTR again. You could do probably the Acclaimed versus maybe Private Party. There's other tag teams that you could potentially feud with the Acclaim. Nobody wants to see Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal go against the Acclaim. Hopefully, and I'm really hoping that if that is the case, the Acclaim are victorious in this feud and Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal do not win those tag titles. But I was not a huge fan of this segment. I really wasn't. I feel like this was probably like my least favorite thing on the show. So next we get a Jericho Appreciation Society segment. And Jericho, well, pretty much a Chris Jericho promo. Because he's talking about how the giant swing is barbaric and it should be banned. This is because Jericho tapped out to the swing at Final Battle in his match against Claudio Castelloni. He calls himself that he still says that he's the Ocho. And he goes on to say that Daniel Garcia should never have lost to Wheeler. And now he wants Daniel Garcia to shadow his elder, and that is Sammy Guevara. And then Sammy Guevara says that the Blackpool Combat Club and Jericho Appreciation Society may be over, but Sammy will face John Moxley on Rampage. So you could tell Daniel Garcia was not happy that he got assigned to shadow Sammy Guevara. So I'm very curious to see where that goes. Next, we have the Brian Cage versus Jungle Boy Jack Perry. This is a really good match, and I've said it before. Brian Cage can move. For a big guy like him, he can move and he can go. And that's not something you see in most big men. Most big men like Brian Cage, they could barely move, but Brian Cage could actually move. And I'm really happy that they're trying to use him more. I felt like he was a talent that wasn't being used as much, and now he's getting more TV time. So good for Brian Cage. The one thing about this is, let it be known that Brian Cage did tap out to a snare trap, but of course, if the ref doesn't see it, did it really happen? Because Prince Nana was causing a distraction, which allowed Brian Cage to tap out, and the match still continued because the ref didn't see it. So Jungle Boy is ultimately victorious in this. And so, like he said, at Full Gear, he beat Luchasaurus and he just beat Cage. And now he wants the biggest bitch, and that is Big Bill. And then Stokely Hathaway comes out and he says that Jungle Boy will see two things: the bottom of Big Bill's boot and the back of Stokely's hand. And then Lee Moriarty and Big Bill attack Jungle Boy. Of course, Big Bill choke slamming Jungle Boy. And so Hook comes out and the firm leave, and then he extends his hand to Jungle Boy. I'm not entirely sure where they're going to go with Jungle Boy and Hook. I kind of feel like they don't know what to do with Hook, and so they're bouncing him around. Because remember, he had the whole team of Danhausen, and it was Hookhousing, which I actually really liked. I wish we would have seen more of Hookhousing. And then he got paired up with Action Bronson, and now he's saving a Jungle Boy. So I feel like they're trying to place Hook in these scenarios to see where it sticks. But hey, I would not mind seeing Jungle Boy versus Hook for that FTW title. Then we get a Blackpool Combat Club promo, and John Moxley talks about how everybody might be a little confused about what's going on, but he keeps it real. And he says that Claudio swung a grown man by his ankles, and that was just a small statement of what they can and will do. And they go on to say that in 2023, they're putting everyone on notice, and if you want to come get some, they know where to find them. This is what Wheeler Yuta said. And that they have one last worm to stomp on. Moxley says he will stomp on Sammy's face and leave him a bloody message. And then he says that if Hangman knows where to find Moxley, he should bring his Dark Order buddies. So, about this promo, it's interesting that Bryan Danielson was not with BCC yet. I'm very curious to see if Bryan Danielson will continue with the BCC. But the fact that Moxley tells Hangman to bring his Dark Order buddies probably tells me we're going to get what's left of the Dark Order and Hangman versus BCC in a tag match somewhere down the road. And next week, we find out that Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee will have their meeting face-to-face. And Swerve Strickland says he has no friends in this industry, only affiliates. We get House of Black versus Nick Comoroto, Cole Karter, and Aaron Solo, The Factory. And before this match even starts, like, Julia Hart spits the black mist to Nick Comoroto's face. Like, she smiles a little bit before she does that. And then everything just ascends into chaos. There's a brawl that breaks out. And Malachi Black is just sitting there, like, watching this madness unfold. And then when the match actually starts, QT Marshall gets dropped and House of Black wins this. So I don't want to call this a squash match, but this was basically to make House of Black look good and to pick up that momentum. Remember, they came back and they wanted to go to war with everybody. So good for them for winning this, and I think they needed to win. Okay, so next you had a Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D, backstage interview. And she says that Cheetah is only famous for breaking her nose. And before she can go any further, Sky Blue interrupts and says that Britt is good at talking, but is she good at wrestling? And she challenges Britt to a match on Rampage. So next we get Chris Jericho versus Action Andretti. And I have to say, this match surprised me because I thought this was going to be your typical squash match. I thought Chris Jericho was just going to come out here and squash this jobber. I mean, Jericho even called him a jobber. So I was pleasantly surprised by this match. This was actually a really good match and a great showing by Action Andretti. I mean, he clothesline Chris Jericho, and he did a backbreaker, neckbreaker combo. He drop kicked Chris Jericho, and surprise, like Action Andrade was actually like victorious. Like the crowd was behind Action on Andrade, and rightfully so. I mean, he was really good. He surprised me. I have never heard of this guy before. I don't know if anybody has heard of him. But he was actually, I'm really impressed by him. And we actually just found out, I think Tony Khan just tweeted out that Action Andrade is All Elite. So good for him making an impressive debut. And backstage, you see Chris Jericho going crazy. He's like tossing things around. So I'm very curious to see where this is gonna go. Like, are we gonna see a descent of Jericho into madness because he lost to a jobber? Is this gonna be an every week thing? Like, maybe have like, let's say you have Chris Jericho face random jobbers, but then he loses. Is that what this is gonna be? I'm actually very curious to see where this leads to. So then we get a Ricky Starks promo. It's actually a really good promo. I really enjoyed it. Ricky Starks is also just like MJF, is really good at cutting promos. And he starts talking about how he grinded and he paid his dues for the last 11 years. And he makes mention of the fact that MJF said that last week was Star Making Performance, but Ricky Starks is reminded that he's been doing that in his sleep. He's been letting people know who he is since day one. He says that MJF has to find validation in his stupid ass ratings, and I'm such a draw. He says that MJF doesn't know what it's like to have people to support you, be behind you, and he is a man. He will prove to everybody that had a doubt. He's the coldest MFer and stylish MFer, and he don't forget the name Ricky Starks. So it's a really good promo by Ricky Starks, and it hyped me for the match, honestly. So next we get it Ruby Soho versus Ty Conti, or actually I should say Ty Mello. And before Ruby Soho even got into the ring, Ty Mello attacked her. She attacked her, and then the two women went at it on the outside of the ring. Ty threw Ruby into the steel steps, and then both women finally get into the ring. The ref checked on poor Ruby until the match finally starts. Ruby does 3 big Satayo suplexes, and then a no future to Ty, but Ty gets her hands up and she blocks it. Ty quickly gets the upper hand and plants Ruby on the map with the hammerlock DDT. But ultimately, in the end, Ruby Soho wins after she hits the no future. And at the end of the match, Anna JASS attacks Ruby Soho. So I have to say, one of the things I like about this was this match had a story. Like, Ty Mello broke Ruby Soho's nose, and she was out for 3 months because of that. And so, like, Ruby Soho has been looking for revenge. She beat Ty Mello here, but it seems like probably she's gonna have to face Anna JASS for that attack on her. You should check out some of Ricky Starks in the NWA. That's where I first saw him, when he was an NWA World TV Champion. Okay, thanks for the recommendation. I will definitely check him out in the NWA. So then afterwards, you get a quick Hangman Adam Page promo, and he says that if people want to know if he still has migraines, still gets dizzy in the shower, or does he want to know when he will be cleared to wrestle Moxley, because it doesn't look like anytime soon. So if you guys remember, in October, Hangman Adam Page did suffer a concussion because of Jon Moxley. So Hangman says that he will give the status updates that he couldn't give in October when he was lying face down on the mat snoring for 60 seconds. He says that they put him in the stretcher, and then they put him in the ambulance, and they asked him about a bunch of questions that he finally got right. He asked him what day it was. It was October 18th. Where were they? In Cincinnati, Ohio, and who he was wrestling, Jon Moxley. Then he says that they were trying to check his phone because he had over 100 missed calls and text messages, and asked Hangman if that little boy in his phone was his son, but he didn't know his son's name for a whole hour. So he says he will fight Moxley on Rampage, but if Moxley's tempting him to go back to hell, he will take Moxley with him. So very good promo by Hangman. I'm actually really digging this feud between Hangman and Jon Moxley. And our main event was going to be a winner-take-all match for both the AEW World Title and the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Now, I have to say, because this was a winner-take-all match, it made it pretty obvious who was going to win this match. I don't think that MJF was going to lose this very quickly, as this was his first title defense. And I have to say, one of the things I liked is, before the start of the match, they cut to Ricky Starks and MJF backstage, and MJF is just like getting like a massage, a full body massage, and he's just totally relaxed. Meanwhile, Ricky Starks is like working out. So it's because contrast, both contrast and very well into the characters. MJF has no pressure, like he said earlier in the night, and is super confident. Meanwhile, Ricky Starks, he is preparing for probably the biggest match of his career. But this was an impressive match. Like, and even though Ricky Starks lost, he definitely proved that he will be a world champion in the future. He proving main event talent right here. This was an incredible match. One of my favorite spots in this match was MJF doing the flare strut. I thought that was really, really funny. And another shot that I liked was actually when MJF had locked in Salt of the Earth, and then he like grabbed Stark's arm and his foot and preventing him from breaking the hold, but Ricky Starks still managed to get his foot on the rope. And of course, MJF using heel tactics, he grabbed the referee and then gave Starks a low blow. And so MJF is victorious in this bout. Of course, like I said, it was a little predictable, but hey, I don't mind predictability as long as it's a good match. And this was certainly a great match. So as MJF is walking away, Bryan Danielson finally returns and MJF walks away. And Bryan Danielson helps Ricky Starks up. So now we know who is MJF's next opponent. It is MJF. It is Bryan Danielson, sorry. And honestly, they hinted at this. MJF mentioned Bryan Danielson in that promo of his, and then not to mention MJF attacked William Regal and Bryan Danielson left with Regal on that ambulance. So I'm actually pretty excited to see MJF versus Bryan Danielson. I don't know if Bryan Danielson would win this time around. I think that Bryan will probably lose to MJF. I would be surprised if Bryan does beat MJF, but I don't think he is. But eventually, somewhere down the road, Bryan will win that AEW title. But with that being said, tonight's show was, I would say, a 9 out of 10. Only because I did not really like that Acclaim segment with Sanjay Dutt, Jeff Jarrett, and Satan Singh. That's the only reason why. But other than that, I really liked everything else on the show. I really enjoyed the show. But with that being said, you guys, thank you guys all so much for watching and for the continuous support. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell so you get notified whenever I go live or I release a new video. And then I will see you guys hopefully live on Friday after some Rampage. Bye.